Russians have got a very big army. They're not as their front lines are not as demoralized as has been made out. I mean, they're still able to fight. They're still, they still have a lot of artillery. They may be losing a lot of men, but they're not running away as yet.
Last night, Russian gas company Gazprom announced it would not resume supplies to Europe after apparently discovering a fault in the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. But the EU says this is nothing more than an act of retaliation, because the G7 voted yesterday to impose a price cap on Russian oil in an effort to try to cripple Moscow's finances. Money it will surely be desperate for as Ukrainian forces continue their counteroffensive in the southern city of Kherson. The Times correspondent Richard Spencer is in Mykolaiv and joins us this morning. Richard, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, thanks for being with us. So first of all then, on Nord Stream 1, on Gazprom, and on this indefinite delay to reopening Nord Stream 1, what is your assessment of this, and I suppose the tactics, the strategies at play here?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's kind of surprising that it's been open at all. I mean, there's now a full-scale war on in Ukraine. The West is sanctioning Russia. And says it doesn't want to buy Russian gas because it doesn't want to support Russia. So Russia is obviously going to. It was always likely to retaliate. So not surprisingly, at this point, Russia said, "Okay, we're going to put pressure on you, just as you're putting pressure on us." The question really is: has the West got its act together enough? Has Germany got its gas reserves enough to cope with this? I think everyone saw it coming sooner or later.
That's interesting. And in terms then of, I suppose, the resilience within Europe, within European countries, you mentioned there Germany. Does that resilience exist to the extent that actually this is just a minor blip? How do we describe the impact of this?
I think it varies from country to country and the measures they've taken. I mean, in Ukraine here, people are very worried about the, morale in general, in terms of they're not really so worried anymore about the morale of the troops on the front line. They're worried about the morale in Ukraine as a society, and in the West, particularly the European countries and America who've supported Ukraine. Will they be willing to go on with that? Will popular support for Ukraine, which is quite strong in European countries, continue when it hits people in their own pockets, when gas bills soar as we're expecting over the winter? That's what people are worried about here. I guess a lot will depend on what individual governments can do to mitigate the cost to the consumer.
Absolutely. We'll find out more about that later on in the programme as well. Let's focus then on events in Ukraine, as you are reporting on, Richard. First of all, in Mykolaiv, what is happening there? What's the latest where you are? Just sort of try to outline what stage these various offensives, retaliations, fightbacks, pushbacks, what stage are we at?
Sure. Well, Mykolaiv is quite an important city because it's one of the big cities of Ukraine, and it's right on the front line. I mean, it's about the front line on this Kherson offensive that people have been talking about is only about 10 to 15 miles southwest of here. Kherson and Mykolaiv are very close. They're linked by a motorway. There's a bit of countryside in between, and that's where a lot of the fighting has been going on right from the start of the war. This was Mykolaiv. The Russians attempted to take Mykolaiv. There's a crucial bridge over the river just to the west of here, which would have give them access to Odessa and the whole southwest coast. The Ukrainians held them off in the first weeks of the war. There's kind of a lot of bloody fighting here, and now, as you say, the Ukrainians are trying to fight back. It's a very closed area. The Ukrainians are trying to prevent us and everyone from not only going to the front lines here, but actually finding out what's going on. But we have been interviewing people who've been fighting on the front lines. It's quite a cautious attack by the Ukrainians. It's not a blitzkrieg by any means. It's more of a repositioning. The Russians have given away their front lines in a lot of areas, but fallen back to a sort of second lines about 5 miles. Well, it varies from place to place, but a few miles further in towards this city of Kherson, and then started firing back with artillery. So it's a very cut and thrust type of war, not a massive blitzkrieg.
In terms of, I suppose, you being not given access in some ways to what is going on, does that create a bit of a fog of uncertainty actually on how this effort from the Ukrainian side is actually progressing?
Indeed, we are able to work out the broad outlines of what's going on by basically putting the Ukrainian accounts, which are fairly non-existent, next to the Russian accounts, which obviously are full of sort of real things and propaganda. You can't hide everything all the time. Work out and, as I say, talk to people back from the front who, they're trying to stop them talking to us, but a couple of people have spoken to us. You can sort of patch together what's going on. I think what the Ukrainians have done right from the beginning. Actually, they've been very tight on information, and again, it's all to do with morale and keeping up support. They don't want a Vietnam situation. They don't want big photos of bodies and badly injured men and bodies on the battlefield to lower morale. This war is all about the psychology as well as the actual artillery, and that's what they're counting on, is this groundswell of support and a belief in the strength of the Ukrainians and their ability to fight the Russians. And they don't want that examined too closely. I'm not sure whether it's clearly a strategy that's worked in the short term. Whether that can be sustainable over a long grinding war that we're expecting, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that as well. Alexei Arestovich, a key advisor to President Zelensky, stressed there would be no quick wins as this offensive began a couple of days ago. And that is surely the message to take from this, that, although there is enthusiasm and I suppose good morale among soldiers to continue the pushback against the Russians, actually this isn't going to be over quickly.
Yeah, and Arestovich is an interesting character, because if you look at what he says, the message changes very dramatically from one day to the next. Because one day he's saying, yes, we're going for Kherson, we're going to liberate it, and you see some of their generals. I was just reading an interview with the general commanding this front for the Ukrainians, who was saying that Kherson would be liberated by the end of the summer. Well, they only actually started the assault on Kherson in the last week in August. So, and now they're saying, well, it'll be a long, slow grind. So, you have to take everything people say with a pinch of salt. But, the fact on the ground is the Russians have got a very big army. They're not as, their front lines are not as demoralized as has been made out. I mean, they're still able to fight. They're still, they still have a lot of artillery. They may be losing a lot of men, but they're not running away as yet. So they've got a lot of territory to retake the Ukrainians, if they really do, as they say, want to, reclaim all the territory in Ukraine. That's about a fifth of Ukraine is under Russian control. So, it's not going to happen quickly.
Richard, thank you very much indeed. Thanks for joining us this morning. Good to speak to you. That's the Times' Richard Spencer reporting from Mykolaiv.